So you've got your referral after waiting endlessly, and that's great. But now what? What does an autism assessment actually involve? We're here to walk you through what happens during the assessment, how to prepare your child, and what to expect on the day. We've been through this ourselves 3 times, so we know what we're talking about. So let's get into it.
So welcome back. I'm John, this is Elizabeth, and today we're going to be getting into what's actually involved in your child's autism assessment. So we're going to break it down to make it easily understandable and give you an insight of what's actually involved.
So an autism assessment, it's an observation over 1 or multiple sessions. It may include play-based interaction, questionnaires and interviews. It will involve the parents as well as the child. So it's a great time to pull out any notes that you've been making up until this point. It's designed to understand how your child experiences the world and not to judge them. How to prepare your child. So how do you get your child ready without freaking them out? This is going to be completely dependent on your autistic person and the level of understanding that they have.
So you want to keep your language simple when you're talking to your child. Just simply explain they're going to be meeting someone who wants to learn about how they play and how they talk and interact. Obviously, it's quite a difficult subject to bring up with your child if their level of understanding is minimal. Not trying to sound too blunt, that might just be a bit easier if they haven't got that level of understanding, because they're going to go into an environment where it's something new and they might find interest in doing something like that without worrying what the actual subject is.
In our experience, for all 3 of our children, when they went to the observation side of the assessment, there was a lot of sensory toys and a lot of stuff that intrigued them. So for them, as far as they were concerned, they were just going in for some play, which worked really well.
And also, if they're anxious as well beforehand, you can use some elements like role play to sort of get them prepared, what they might experience during this. Because obviously you haven't been through it yourselves yet, so it's just basically along the lines of meeting someone new who's going to be observing what they're doing, watching them how they play. So that'll be quite a straightforward one. You want to let them bring something comforting as well, because they're going to be there a while. So a favourite toy, a fidget, maybe some snacks as well. And one other thing we haven't talked about yet, which is fantastic, is maybe buying yourselves a set of these and bringing them along. These are ear defenders, and you wouldn't go anywhere without them.
We wouldn't, no. They are an absolutely brilliant tool, especially if your autistic person is very sensitive to noise. We're not going to put any links on, give you any recommendations on where you can purchase these, as we're not endorsed by any companies. But if you go online, you will definitely be able to find a pair that will be suitable for your child and help them.
Yeah, you can get a whole different range of colours and styles, so anything that sort of goes with their style, you can pretty much get your hands on online. So have a look, and I'm sure you'll find one to suit. And they're quite minimally expensive, aren't they? They're not really that bad. You can get them for under a tenner, and they're still phenomenal and do the same job as a pair that are 100 quid.
100%, yeah.
But yeah, do your research on that. So you're probably not going to have much downtime as parents with this as well. I mean, feel free to bring a book, but also be prepared to be sort of bombarded with questions. Nothing is too invasive. Again, they're simply asking questions to get an understanding of your child. So you're going to be quizzed as well. Again, make sure you bring some sensory items as well, a pair of headphones for your child. And it's okay if during the whole time you're there, your child doesn't want to talk or engage, because that is information that they're going to use to help them make their decision. So even if your kid hides under the table the entire time, guess what? That is going to help the assessors make a decision. So what is going to happen during your child's assessment? So let's talk through what the day might actually look like. So this is focusing purely on the multidisciplinary assessment known as the MDA. So you may have an individual assessment, which is going to be quite an intimate setting where you're going to be with your child with a group of assessors, or it could be the other one where it's a group assessment. So you'll be with multiple parents and other children in there, all being looked at.
It may be just one session, or it could be several. In the instance that they need to do several observations, it could mean that they'll investigate and observe at home with yourself and your child. It could also mean that they want to observe your child in their educational setting, and this would be prior to the final assessment, which would happen at sort of a healthcare centre, community centre, where they would have the panel of say 4 or 5 professionals that would then come up with the diagnosis or the not diagnosis.
So let's just say, who are the people that are going to be involved in the assessment?
So the professionals that are likely to be involved in the assessment for your child, you would most likely have a paediatric consultant, most likely a speech and language therapist, potentially a SENCO, but everybody that will be involved will be within that sort of SEN community.
Yeah.
So in terms of the observations, they may do tasks, ask questions to your child, offer choices. Parents may be interviewed at the same time as the observation is going on, or potentially separately, and they'll want to ask you questions about your child's development and sort of their routines and their behaviours, and they'll even go as far back as how your labour went and how the pregnancy went, just to create a full picture. The best advice that we can give you is just be completely honest through the whole thing. You're not there to be judged. They just need to get all the information necessary to create an outcome.
Yeah, there's no point in holding anything back. You're going to regret not saying why you were there, so just be an open book with the whole thing.
100%. In terms of our experience with Bear, his MDA was group assessment, so he was one of 5 boys that were all being assessed at the same time. Whereas with Bob, she actually had an individual assessment where we didn't have any additional observations. It was a one meeting where they then came up with the outcome. And then additionally with Bob, he went through the over 5 pathway. So his assessment took place while at school. I did go in for one meeting with a speech and language therapist, where they sort of asked me all the questions about the early years and the development and everything, but it was very much quite minimal involvement from the parents for that age.
Yeah, because it's in a school setting, you're not able to sort of go into the same level as the MDA because there's other children in the classroom as well. So your involvement is minimal. The same sort of outcome with the board when they're discussing their findings, that will remain the same as the MDA. So it'll be very similar process.
After the assessment, what happens next? Once the assessment's over, what can you expect?
Right, don't jump the gun on this, but sometimes you can actually expect to get your result at the end of the assessment on that day. I'm not saying you should take that as absolute certainty, but sometimes they will give you a good indication of where it's going or how it's been. So you may find you get an answer then. However, be prepared to wait weeks or possibly months for your answer, because it is all dependent on the body that is examining it at the time, depending on councils, depending on their workloads as well. You could find you're in for a bit of a wait, so be prepared for that as well. You should also expect to receive a full report regardless of what diagnosis is being given, whether it's a yes or no. You're going to receive a lot of paperwork about what the findings were during the assessment. With that as well, you're going to have a diagnosis of a yes or a no, but it also doesn't mean that the help stops there.
You're allowed to ask questions about the report as well, so if you don't agree with the outcome, do you feel like you can reapproach the panel?
Yeah, with this as well, it's not one answer is final. If you're not happy with the outcome, you can indeed challenge it. And also as well, after this assessment has happened, you need time to process it as well.
In our experience with Bear, he went through, as mentioned, a group MDA, and he was one of 5 children that went through the assessment process on the same day. Now, 4 of the boys did get an ASD diagnosis, however, Bear didn't. And at the end of that, it was very difficult for myself and John.
Yeah.
It was very emotional, and I myself remember coming out of that assessment, sitting in the car and being in absolute hysterics, crying and feeling like nobody was listening to me.
I say, because bear in mind, when you're told in front of the panel, it can be quite an intimidating thing, because you're sat there with 4 or 5 people sitting around you telling you all this information about your child, and then obviously to be told that we didn't fit the criteria, that Bear didn't fit the criteria of it when you suspected that he did. I think that was quite a bitter pill to swallow at the time.
It was. And their outcome was that they wanted to reassess Bear in 6 months' time. Now, they came to do the reassessment in 6 months' time, and at that point, Bear did actually get his diagnosis. So our hunch was right all along, but at that point, after the first assessment, it was very, very difficult for us to process it. And on the flip side, I just want to briefly mention as well that with Bop, she had an individual assessment, and the assessment only lasted about 35 minutes and they gave me verbal confirmation at the end of that assessment that she was going to be getting an ASD diagnosis with a PDA profile. So it was two very, very different outcomes in the initial assessments.
And Bob as well, with his one, because that was done as a over 4s pathway. You can talk about the outcome, how that was delivered as well.
So with Bub, his assessment was, as John mentioned, it was an over 4 pathway, and it was done through the school setting. His results were delivered through the post quite promptly, sort of after about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that was quite streamlined as well. So again, showing that there's a complete variation of timelines as well with each child. So on our advice looking back, here's what we wish someone would have told us before the first assessment.
You're allowed to feel emotional, and trust me, I cried a lot.
I say don't put pressure on your child to perform. I mean, you can have that feeling where you're like, come on, do something autistic. You know, they're having a very neurotypical day. Like, come on, perform for them. You know, show your true colours. So don't worry about that. They've done this hundreds, if not thousands of times, so they know what they're looking for.
Don't feel pressured to take notes or to write anything up, because you will get a full report through the post, and follow your gut, because nobody knows your child more than you do.
Yeah, I mean, we were really worried about getting it right, but there's no right in this. It's just what's real is what they're looking for. So don't worry, it'll go how it's going to go.
So next time we're going to be talking about financial aid that's out there to help you and your family. There's disability living allowance, Notability, as well as several charities that could help you financially. So if this episode has helped, please like, subscribe, share, and let's do this journey together. Until next time.